Here is how to do your metal foil coin practice project. So your end result, if you have access to colored Sharpie, might look anything like this. Most important, there is three-dimensional form developed, easier to see on the back with you're not distracted by color, on any of these coins that you make. So you're thinking about texture, you're thinking about creating large indents and large outdents would be the obvious but not actual real word that goes with that. So some things stick up and some things go down, mountains and valleys, whatever you want to call it, concave and convex. This project is about creating forms. So to begin, you have this little square of metal. I want you to use a big majority of it to design your project. So begin designing on a sheet of paper. Trace around the outside edge of this square so you have a box. But then don't leave your coin as a square. Come up with an outside shape. If it's going to be a circle, make sure your circle touches the middle of those four sides. Or you could change the shape of this and make it more irregular. It could become a diamond even, although what a silly use of a square. You could do a little bit of both. You could have a rounded top and a pointed bottom. So once you have your design finished, you also need to make sure that it has interior details as well as outside shapes that are interesting. The requirement for this coin is it absolutely must contain a number. So whatever you think it should be valued at, you need to contain that number, a 36 coin, because you never know when you need 36, whatever your value of your coin is. Get that done and then fill the rest with textures, patterns, lines, images. Draw a puppy dog. It doesn't matter, but I want the entire thing, the entire surface to be considered. Once it's done, like my example here, you need to get this onto here. And it's actually very easy to do. First of all, you're going to want to cut that smaller square of paper out of your sketchbook so that you have access to it and it alone. Some people choose, once they have that done, to then tape these two together, so paper on top of metal, but you don't even need tape because this metal can act like its own paper clip. So you fold over the corners and it'll hold your paper in place. How handy dandy is that? And now you're going to use your wooden stylus to trace everything. So when you press on the surface of this metal, it will indent through to the back. See that line I just created? You do have to press harder than you would on a regular pencil to get things to show up. But it is not impossibly hard for your hands to be able to accomplish. So you do need to make sure that you've traced everything. So not only keep an eye and focus on what you're doing, but check the back and see if your drawing is starting to appear. Let me fast forward a second while I go ahead and trace this out. Okay, so I've got everything from here copied onto here in the form of all my outlines. They're there. So what I can do next is I can go ahead and remove the paper off the front. And then I have two things to do, and I like to begin, although it doesn't truly matter, by cutting this thing out. So this foil cuts with scissors like anything else, but it will produce some kind of sharp edges, so just be careful. You want to cut carefully and think about what you're doing because it's not like a piece of paper where you can just tape things back together. And it's also not like you have extra pieces of foil in your art supply kit. So I'm going to finish cutting and once again fast forward so you don't have to watch. Okay, so make sure you deal with your scraps appropriately. As I said, they could be sharp, so make sure they get into the garbage so nobody younger than you or even yourself can get hurt by them. So now this needs to get sculpted. This is a line drawing on a piece of foil. That is absolutely not the project at all. You can use this tool to create mountains and valleys. So to create a mountain, something that pops up on the front, you're going to have to work from the back. Notice I'm working on my sketchbook. This is like the cushion. It's going to help this metal stretch. That's essentially what you're doing. Say I want the 8s or the 8 in the middle of my coin to bump up, the actual shape itself. I'm going to use, I like the back end of this because it's not super pointy and it's nice and rounded, to push over and over just a little bit. It's not about pushing super hard one time. It's about continuously coming back and stretching that metal foil up a little bit more each time I go over it. So it won't wear your hands out if you just do a moderate pressure repeatedly. Now, you can see bumped up on the front, but what is nice is to go back and redefine your edge by pressing down and sharpening things up. So to make that contrast stand out even better, I can indent the middles of my 8s. So now I'm creating this really big bump. Do you see that? Highs and lows on that 8. That is what you're going for with the metal foil. The point is you're sculpting it, you're shaping it, you're making 3D forms. So I'm going to really go over that hole in the middle to really exaggerate the bump on the outside and look at the difference between. And now around here, I have all these cool textures I was working on developing with line patterns. So same thing, I can indent them in sharper here, but I could also flip to the back and make my outside border raise up by going over it and pushing from the back side and making it pop up. So I can get this cool border happening here. I can continue to trace over everything. Think about other textures you can also develop. So actually throwing dots at stuff makes a really fun texture, like you might have noticed on some of the other colored examples that I showed you, or something like this. So once you finish sculpting the entire thing, I do want you to use your Sharpie marker, your black, or anything else you have access to add color details throughout the surface of your coin. I want you to do that when you're done sculpting, because if there's already Sharpie on the surface and you rub it with your metal stylus, it'll actually start to remove some of that Sharpie. So you'll end up having to Sharpie or color 2 times, which is a waste of your time. So sculpt first and then go back in and add your Sharpie. So I have some more sculpting to do, probably another 20-30 minutes of work, focusing and paying attention on making my mountains and my valleys before I'm ready to color this thing, and then it would be finished.